Good evening and welcome to yet another exciting episode of A Cuppa with Nomcebo. This is a show where we get to sit down and have a cup of tea with guests who have done amazing things in the community. Guests who have gone through life-changing experiences, which we feel that as Eswatini TV, we need to share such stories. Today is no other day. Today we get to sit with Gaia Muzungu, who is a recovered drug addict. He'll be sharing with us his journey to recovery, to being an addict, and all the way to his recovery. Gaia, thank you so much for taking the time, from your busy schedule to come and sit with us in the studio today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's an absolute honor, and sipping this tea, with you having a cuppa, with you, Gaia, and the wonderful work that you're doing. Yeah. But before we just go into your story, yes, on, being a recovered drug addict today, I just need to get to know you better. If you could just tell us a bit more about who you are and what you're about.
Okay. Just to try not to be so long, but again, you said my name is Gaia Muzungu. I'm originally from Kenya, born but lived here since I was 8 years old. We moved here. I was excited to be in a new place, mm-hmm, and I consider Eswatini my home.
Right.
Many of my experiences, both good and bad, have been here.
Right.
Yes, so moved here, went to, grew up mm-hmm, with a good family, a supporting family, good community in terms of went to good schools as well. Mm-hmm. So growing up,
schools did you go to? Because you grew up in Baban, right?
Yes, I grew up in Baban.
The good thing about Swaziland, Eswatini, that was such a small community.
Yes, yes.
And today I'm actually having a cuppa, with you, and just for the viewers' interest, we actually know another. But this particular story that we're going to be sharing today, yeah, I really didn't know anything about it, but I'm glad that he's actually going to be sharing it with me today. No. Please do proceed.
I appreciate.
Grew up in Baban,
yeah,
good family. Yeah.
Grew up in Baban, good family, church-going family, Christian
Right.
background. So from early on, although it was a force in the beginning, it was always church every Sunday.
Forced.
Yeah. You always had other things to do.
Right.
When you were younger. Mm-hmm. And I just went to school. Normally, I went to Eswatini Primary.
Right.
And that's the beauty of Eswatini, is that you grow up with the same people all the way to professional level, which you work, and that's the beauty of the space. And then I think typically I was a good student, mm-hmm, average, just went, but I was better at sports. Sports was my strength.
Yeah, which brings me to my next question.
Yes.
If you want to share any hobbies,
Yeah, hobbies. I've taken to sports. I love sports, but I'm a typical guy, I guess. I played soccer in the early days, but as well, as you can see, I'm big. So as I grew bigger, it was tougher to play football. Yeah, but then I finished primary school with no particularly interesting stories. I don't think it was the general just play sports.
Yes, yeah.
And then I got into high school. Mm-hmm. High school, I started off in Waterford, and I was there for 2 years.
Okay.
And then I transferred to South Africa, Nelspruit, Penryn College it was.
Yeah.
So again, I think in that and through high school there, I took on again. I had become bigger, so I took rugby as a sport.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, rugby was a natural sport.
Yes.
I got to enjoy. I was a typical teenager, always angry, so I thought, why not hurt other people?
That's when you used to take out your frustrations on the field,
Exactly.
running with that rugby ball.
Yeah, with the rugby ball, yeah.
Okay, that's really great, George. And is there any other special thing that, besides the story that we're going to go into, that you'd like to share, with us? Some of you probably don't know,
Wow.
Traits or, you know, your traits, you know, just something
I
special?
don't know. I think for me, what I always, and I appreciate now, is that as big as I was always the gentle. I think a lot of people have deemed me the teddy bear because I think I have been always moved and with people. I've been with compassion for people, and I think I also give credit to how I was brought up.
Okay.
I think it was always about others, and not being selfish in
growing up, Gaia, what were your dreams and aspirations
I think
in the future?
Yeah, and this forms part of what I get to learn. I think it is, you know, in earlier stage was always to be successful in whatever endeavors I had taken. I mean, I just wanted to be, first sports, I think that's the natural. What you're good at, you tend to gravitate towards.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to play sports, and I think in reality, for me was that I think as an African family, sports was deemed
not an option. Yes.
Yeah, it was not an option.
You can't be thinking sports.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, you can't be saying you need to take.
So they're looking for the engineers. Is there an engineer or you're a doctor?
Yeah, and I come from a very academic family. I think, but I struggle academically.
Right.
I think I was just always finding that as hard as I tried, I couldn't get the results that was promised from trying hard.
Right.
And with sports, I was just natural. I didn't put in effort, and I was better, and I could see that. So I gravitated towards that. And I think, okay, finishing high school, and that's in essence what you want, but you're discouraged not to do that. So I think those are first earlier disappointments in terms of the dreams I wanted to aspire to. So I wanted to be a professional.
Right. So at some point, you said you then moved to Nelspruit.
Yes.
I believe for matric.
Yes, for matric.
And how was that experience for you? Did you move to Nelspruit with your family? It was the first time for you to get out, you know, and be on your own in a different country.
Yeah, and I think that's when, as you look back, it's certain events that trigger to the story we're going to talk about, and I get to understand how, because we had left. I've been in Swaziland with my family since
the whole time.
The whole time.
Yeah,
so to leave first, and I didn't know South Africa, so we weren't frequent visitors. So you would see, like, you'd get to understand, and then I think the shock for me getting there was again, it was just post-apartheid. So the separation and so rejection in the early stage was evident, because you and being English speaker, and we spoke Swahili at home, so you had either Siswati from Swazi kids or Afrikaans.
You're right. You know, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to take it from there. Just tell us about those experiences that you're actually expressing to us about, you know, moving to Nelspruit all by yourself and facing racism, because it's there and it's real. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. If you've just joined us, you're watching a Cuppa with Nomcebo, a program whereby we get to share a cup of tea with some very interesting people who have life-changing stories to share with the nation. Gaia, before we went to break, you were just telling us about, you know, your new reality. You're on your own, moving to South Africa. You're 14 years old, and you're discovering new things that the world isn't so nice, you know, after all.
Yeah, and also I think it also brings to light how much I think we have it well in Eswatini. I think growing up here, you weren't exposed to that. Yes, there is a sense of it, but I think the inclusion part, you know, I had friends of all colors, and to get there and you're excluded, and I think that's the initial part of rejection. So you're not good enough being yourself.
Right.
And I think this forms lies again in your head, which is also trying to fit in. And I think inevitably every teenager tries to fit in, and to fit in being who they are. So I think you start then adopting or breaking your values in terms of, like, now where we come into substances, you know, like I'm not from a drinking family, but drinking was a way to be accepted. So you'd go join, and started, and I think from early age, that was my introduction to substances. You know?
Yeah, it was an escape for you.
It was an escape. Then
Yeah.
and also to be in the place where you are aware that people do not accept you for
Right,
what you
because
are.
you mentioned that, look,
Yeah.
you're a big guy,
Yeah.
you're very good in rugby,
Yeah.
and we know it's predominantly, dominated by,
White,
by the white folks. And
yes.
how did that make you feel? Because, look, this is something you're really good in.
Yeah, well, I think that's when the acceptance came. It was like just okay. In at that time, you wouldn't know it. I think looking back, for me, it was a way of being accepted. You know, for not being able to speak a certain language, a South African language.
That's when the acceptance
So that's when the
started.
acceptance,
Okay.
because of my
Right,
talent.
rugby,
It was an
right.
obvious talent. I really did well. I think even to the stage where I think I was the first one to make it provincial in the school. So I was pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's when also the acceptance came, and also the culture of rugby is with drinking.
Right.
I think it was always a thing.
So at you're
Yeah.
14, you're in high school.
Yeah.
And that's where you were first exposed to substance abuse, which is alcohol.
Yeah.
Take us through that first day.
The first day.
You took your first drink. I hope you remember it.
And actually, the first drink I took was in Swaziland. So I always find the journey always starts where you
So it was
least.
earlier,
It was
so-
earlier than that. So I was still just entering high school, and it was a drink at that time. It was the hangout spot.
Yeah.
And I remember, I mean, it was always that being naughty, trying it out. And of course, like beer, everyone was supposed to drink beer, but didn't like the taste. So started with ciders. But it was very acceptable, I think, at that time,
Yes.
It was all the teenagers. And I think that's just also speaks volume to the lack of things that to encourage you to like sports and stuff.
Right.
In Eswatini, it was always to go out. That's the only thing we do is go out, have drinks.
Yes, because
Go out, have
not
drinks.
enough,
No activities, nothing.
No activities,
Yeah.
sporting facilities,
Facilities
at the
and
time.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a
those
challenge.
early days. I mean, things have improved now, and I think there's more with the social media aspects, and there's lots of programs, and there's lots of other things that are being done. At that time, wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there you are in Nelspruit, you're 14, so
Yes.
you're on your own. And then the substance abuse continues.
Yeah, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
also call it abuse at that time, because I think you're just experimenting.
Okay.
And I think, you're experimenting, but also like anything else, the more you do it, the easier it becomes in terms of, that guilt of doing it.
Right.
It becomes acceptable, yeah.
And you were a young person, so you
Yeah.
obviously go to school at some point and you come back home, Eswatini, when
Yes.
schools are closed and you're back with your folks at home, and
Yeah.
you need to go back to that setup, that Christian home, the
Yes.
values,
Yeah.
that you have, at your house. So how do you relate to your parents? Because we know teenagers,
Yeah.
I've been there myself,
Yeah.
where you all of a sudden think that you know everything, got all the
Yeah.
answers, in the world. And already you have that, that little experience with alcohol now.
Yeah.
Do you come back and just be a normal kid? What
Well, you
happens
try. I
there?
think for me was, we had the freedom, to be with our friends. So, and I think that's where also it thrives, because you're not also honest. I think in hindsight, every teenager is drinking or at some point was exposed to. So we didn't really get kind of lectured on that. It was very shunned. Of course, you couldn't. But I think it was just being naughty. And
Okay.
I think it was getting with friends on weekends. So they wouldn't know. And then I think you just manage that best. It's again lies. And
So
because
did
it
you
is,
have a strict background, or your parents were, were parents that, were understanding, not so strict?
I mean, they were, in essence, I think, very principled people.
Okay.
My parents instilled discipline, corporal in the early days. That's like, but
Yeah,
looking back, you appreciate that, because I think and it plays parts too.
Yes, I totally agree with you, you know, because I'm from a strict background. Yeah, my mom was so strict, you know, towards, you know, my brothers and I, and trust me, try and be naughty, you know, you're going to get that hiding. And I think today, just as you're alluding, you know, it's a good thing. It comes in handy at some point in our lives. Before we go on with our interview, Gaia, we are going to take a quick commercial break. Do not leave. Don't go away. Thank you very much for joining us on Eswatini TV. You are watching a Cuppa with Nomcebo. Today we are having a conversation with Gaia Muzungu, who is a recovered drug addict. These are stories, Eswatini, that need to be told, because trust me, I know there's a viewer sitting right there that needs a solution, and that just needs to know that how do I get there? How do I get recovered? How do I stop my addiction? And I believe today's episode is going to do exactly that. It's going to inspire you as parents. It's going to inspire the teachers in schools. It's going to inspire the young people. So this is a very important episode for us. And I do hope that it's going to, you know, change the nation at large. Gaia, you're such an ambassador. I'm very proud of you. So I just want us to jump into our main story. Yeah, recovered drug addict. Yes. Yeah, you've been exposed to substances such as cocaine. Tell us from the first day that began. How did it all start?
And I think when I tell my story, I think the important thing is to say that when you start at you know, experimenting at 13, it's never where you believe you'll end up having a substance control your life.
Right.
So I think, you know, all the wiser now, I get to see how it kind of, our setup, how the setup is, yes. So, yeah, so I mean, if we go through just quickly through high school.
So you were first exposed to cocaine?
In university.
In university. Yeah, so in high school, okay, it was.
So in high school, but I guess it was okay now to drink. Right. It was okay to and locally, I think it's very safe where weed is okay to be smoked, ganja, and for me, that then eased my kind of what would I say, my outlook towards drugs. Slowly, I can see how it chipped in.
Right. And how did it chip in? Because you say you know, you saw it, you know, slowly saw that it's actually moving to looking for harder drugs. Just we want to, you actually hear that part. You know, what made you feel that now you need more, you know, substances to get high?
But I think it's the exposure, it's the company you keep, it's where you're going. This is what happens, and I think for me it was very easily available.
So where did it start? Was it at home? Was it in a club? Was it in a bathroom somewhere at school?
It was at a club in Cape Town. So that's where I went to varsity, and I think it was just a night where I think it was a normal night going out to drink. We were, of course, a bit drunk, and someone suggested, let's try this.
Amongst a circle of friends?
Yes. And it wasn't. I think it was someone we also, I think, had joined. So it's.
And what did he say to you? I just want.
I think it was like, let's try. Wouldn't you like to try cocaine? And at that time, you've kind of when you're drunk, you're not thinking also clearly.
Yes.
And again, telling you how it is. It's just by that time, it was, let me try it. What's the worst that could happen? So got to try that, and that was my first introduction to it.
Right.
So after that, I was like, and how it made me feel, very confident.
Oh yeah, I wanted to get to that question. How did that first, you know?
The first hit. Yeah, because you sniff it. Yeah. The first hit was fantastic. I think I remember going out that night, and it was like Superman. I always call it the Superman drug, because all your insecurities, all the things you would worry about, I was very confident going into, especially also that time it was predominantly white club, because that's in Cape Town, that's what's available. And then I remember it was probably one of the best nights I had, thinking, because all your fears of what are people thinking or what were gone, had disappeared. So, and I remember that day saying it was too good that I wouldn't do it again.
Right.
Yeah. So I didn't do it again,
You
which
didn't
is
do
fair.
it again.
Yeah. It didn't. But what I also now learn about the drug is that it changes your neurons in your head. So it alters the way you think. So you don't see it, but it's altered the way I think about.
And after just that
physically,
first
that first
experience, so it did have that effect.
Yeah. So the addiction didn't happen then. It happened again another 8 years later. But that's where it started.
So
but then even, to be honest, it started when I was 13, drinking. So my idea is the trick to addiction and understanding it is not a once-off. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's a series of events that lead me there.
That lead you to that.
So when I took it the first, went on with my life, still drinking, escaped, moved back to Swaziland, and then I was reunited with it 8 years later. But this time, 8 years later, it was now, that's when the addiction took. In a space of 2-3 years, it became something I couldn't live without.
Right, so 8 years, are you in the country?
I'm in the country, I'm working. I'm working at a good position. I'm growing career-wise, but...
and there you are. Then you are exposed
to
cocaine again.
Yes.
And how was that?
And that again, from drinking, friend in the circle that I was, I think it's at one of the popular places, and said, hey, we have cocaine. So I said, okay. Having already used it 8 years ago, it was just something I would easily, okay, it's fine. So, and that became, then it was like every weekend now.
Right.
So it started, it was also on a social. That was a once-off. Then maybe a month later, then it became, the use became, I was buying for myself. Then I was using more than others were using. Then in a space of, I think, that 2 years, I had come to a place where I was doing it at work, doing it at lunchtime, doing it, and it's an expensive habit.
Yes,
so
we actually are going to go into that. So there you are, the drug is like literally taking over your life.
Yes.
You had a great job, and you're having a hit at work. Were you able to then be a normal, employee?
Yeah, I think the idea of it is that I think what you always think you're fooling everyone. I think initially, work didn't know. I think in retrospect, I do say I did it, but I think that's when also the reality of how far it had come, was evident. So at that time, I think it was quite serious. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was, because I was like, how am I taking? Even the idea of to do that at work, was unheard of.
Yes.
And I believe I was a good employee. I was doing well at work, but it was that against secrecy.
Yes, that you now have to live,
Now,
the secret life, and here you are, you were doing cocaine with your friends. And now you've gotten to a point where you're now actually just doing it on your own, because now it's something that you really need to take on a regular basis.
And it being a chemical-based substance, I think the reality is your body needs it to operate in your new normal.
Okay.
So I think inevitably, if I wasn't on it, life was depressing. It was more real, and I think for me it was just to hide.
Right. What I'm going to do is, this story is very special to us. As I mentioned before, it's a life-changing story, and we cannot finish this story in half an hour. So for today, we are going to end our interview with Gaia Muzungu, and we're going to have a second part of this interview, learn more about this addiction and how he got to conquer the addiction. Thank you for watching Eswatini TV, and thank you for watching us on Cuppa with Nomcebo. Love and light. Good night.